The notification pinged, bright and demanding on my phone screen. Mia. Maddie, SOS! The florist for the pre-wedding brunch needs a deposit like yesterday. It's only $800. Can you handle it? You're a lifesaver. XOXO. I stared at the message, the XOLO feeling less like affection and more like the signature on a particularly cheeky invoice. Another Saturday. Another dip into the Madeline fund. My name is Madeline, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one, the one who quietly picked up the pieces, and let's be honest, the one who paid for pretty much everything. I'd worked my tail off since I graduated, built a career I was proud of, a life that should have been my own. Instead, it felt like I was the primary shareholder in Sullivan Family Inc., except I owned no shares and held all the liability. It started small, I guess. Back in high school, Mia needed the designer prom dress. Mum would sigh, "Oh, Madeline, you know how she is. It would just break her heart to go in something less." So my part-time job savings went to Mia's Cinderella moment. I wore a dress my cousin Layla lent me. No one noticed. Then came college. I got scholarships, worked 2 jobs, and ate ramen noodles more times than I care to admit. Mia, on the other hand, needed the out-of-state university experience, the one with the sorority house that looked like a mansion and a meal plan that apparently didn't cover her daily artisanal coffee habit or weekend shopping sprees. "She's just trying to fit in, darling," Mum would coo over the phone. "Could you spot her a little something? We're a bit tight this month." A little something usually had 3 zeros at the end. My little somethings for myself. They got shelved, indefinitely. That down payment I was saving for my own small condo, it magically transformed into the down payment for Mia's essential graduation car, a gleaming white SUV she promptly nicknamed Snowball. I was still taking the bus. And my parents, Laurel and Jacob, bless their hearts, they always seemed to be weathering some new financial storm. "The roof needs urgent repairs, Maddie," Dad would say, his voice heavy with worry. "We just don't know where the money will come from." It came from me, of course, my emergency fund, drained again. Later I'd see Mom's social media posts from a surprisingly sunny staycation that looked suspiciously like a beach resort. But I never said anything. What was the point? It would just be, "Oh, Madeline, don't be so dramatic. We needed a little break from all the stress." The worst part wasn't even the money, though God knows that was a constant ache. It was the expectation, the absolute, unwavering certainty in their eyes that of course Madeline would handle it. My achievements were just expected. My sacrifices, invisible. Mia would get a B on a paper, and there'd be a celebratory dinner. I'd get a promotion, and Mum would say, "That's nice, dear." Now about Mia's rent. Lately, the air had been thick with Mia's wedding. She was engaged to some guy who seemed nice enough, if a little overwhelmed by the Sullivan family whirlwind. The wedding chatter was constant, a glittering expensive cloud hovering over every family interaction, whispers of destination, designer gown, exclusive venue, and every time, all eyes would subtly shift to me. The unspoken question hung heavier than any chandelier. "So, Madeline, how are you planning to pay for all this?" I'd tried to set boundaries once, a few years ago. I'd gently suggested Mia get a part-time job to help with her car insurance. The fallout was nuclear. Mia wailed about how I was trying to ruin her social life. Mum accused me of being jealous and unsupportive. Dad just looked disappointed, muttering something about family sticking together. I caved, of course. The guilt was a well-honed weapon in their arsenal. I zelled Mia the $800 for the florist, my thumb hovering over the send button for a long moment. $800. That was a weekend trip I could have taken, a new course I could have enrolled in. Instead, it was for flowers that would wilt in a day, for a pre-wedding event I probably wouldn't even enjoy. A few hours later, just as I was trying to salvage what was left of my Saturday, my phone buzzed again. Mum. Her name flashed on the screen, and my stomach did a familiar little flip. "Madeline, darling!" Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone that might always preceded a major withdrawal from the Bank of Madeline. "Good, you picked up. Listen, we need to have a family meeting about Mia's wedding. It's important." A knot of dread, cold and familiar, tightened in my chest. Here we go again. Only this time, something about her tone, the calculated casualness of it felt different, bigger. and a tiny, weary voice in the back of my mind whispered, I don't know how much more of this I can take. The family meeting was at Mom and Dad's house, the one I'd helped them secure the down payment for years ago. Mia was already there when I arrived, practically vibrating with excitement, a thick, glossy wedding magazine open on her lap. Mum was fussing with a tray of cookies, my favourite kind, a classic manipulation tactic. Dad was trying to look stern and paternal, but mostly just looked uncomfortable. Madeline, good, you're here, Mom said a little too brightly. Come sit, we have such exciting news. I sat on the edge of the armchair, the one with the slightly frayed armrest I'd always meant to offer to get reupholstered. The knot in my stomach was a full-blown fist now. Mia clapped her hands. Okay, so we've basically finalised everything. It's going to be amazing. She launched into a breathless description. A boutique vineyard in wine country, a guest list of 200, a custom-designed gown that sounded like it cost more than my car, and a week-long celebration. I listened, a growing sense of unreality washing over me. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a royal coronation. Finally, Mia paused for breath, beaming. Mum took that as her cue. And the best part, darling, she said, turning to me, her smile wide and expectant, is that we've managed to get the preliminary budget down to just $100,000. Isn't that wonderful? I blinked. $100,000? The words felt foreign in my mouth. Yes, Mia chirped. For everything. Flights, accommodation for the wedding party, the open bar, everything. Dad cleared his throat. Now, Maddie, we know it's a lot, but this is Mia's dream, her one special day. I looked from one expectant face to another. They couldn't be serious. Mom, Dad, Mia, that's an incredible amount of money. Even for me, I struggled for the right words. That's not something I can just pull out of thin air. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Mum's smile froze, then melted into a frown. What do you mean, Madeline? Don't be difficult. I'm not being difficult, I said, my voice rising slightly despite myself. I'm being realistic. $100,000 is a huge commitment. I don't have that kind of money readily available for a wedding. Mia's lower lip began to tremble. But you have to. It's all planned, the deposits. Some of them are non-refundable. We assumed naturally that you'd want to do this for your sister, Mom said, her voice taking on that sharp, accusatory edge I knew so well. After all we've done for you. All you've done for me? I wanted to scream. Or all I've done for you. But the years of ingrained deference kept the words locked in my throat. I want Mia to have a beautiful wedding, I said, trying to keep my tone even. But this is beyond what's reasonable. Maybe we can look at some other options? Scale things back a bit? Scale back? Mia shrieked, tears welling in her eyes. You want me to scale back my dream wedding because you're being cheap? I can't believe you, Madeline. You're so selfish. Selfish? The accusation stung, sharp and unfair. Mia, I've always supported you, but this is what family does, Laurel interjected, her voice rising. They support each other. Or have you forgotten that, with all your success? Has money made you so heartless that you can't even help your own sister have the wedding she deserves? It's not about being heartless, Mom, I pleaded. It's about being financially responsible. Jacob, who had been silent, finally spoke, his voice laced with disappointment. I must say, Madeline, I'm very disappointed in your attitude. Your mother and I have sacrificed a lot for you girls. A little gratitude wouldn't go amiss. Sacrificed. The irony was a bitter pill. I could feel the familiar burn behind my eyes, the sting of unshed tears, but anger was starting to bubble through the hurt. Hot, potent anger. I think, I said, standing up, my legs feeling a little shaky, that I need to leave. Running away, are we? Mom sneered. When things get a little tough, some successful woman you are. Can't even handle a simple family discussion. You're ruining everything, Mia sobbed, burying her face in her hands. My dream is ruined. I walked out, their angry words, Mia's theatrical wails, echoing behind me. I got into my car, the engine roaring to life, like the fury building inside me. Devastated didn't even begin to cover it. Furious didn't either. It was a toxic cocktail of both. churning in my gut. How could they be so blind, so entitled, so cruel? I drove, not really knowing where I was going, just needing to put distance between myself and that house, that family. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I glanced at it. A text message. From Mia. My heart sank. An apology? A moment of clarity? I pulled over and read it. Oh, and by the way, you're not a bridesmaid, silly. We need you on clean-up duty and running errands for my big day. Be a dear. The winky face emoji felt like a final twist of the knife. Clean-up duty. After demanding $100,000, they were demoting me to unpaid servant. That was it. Something inside me, something that had been bending and straining for years, finally snapped. Clean, hard, irrevocable. The winky face emoji. That damn winky face. It was the final, patronising pat on the head after a lifetime of being treated like an ATM with a heartbeat. Clean-up duty. To her big day. The audacity was breathtaking. I sat in my car, the engine idling, and reread the text. Then again. Each word, each pixel of that smug emoji chipped away at the devastation, replacing it with something colder, harder, resolve. I drove home, not in a blind rage, but with a chilling clarity. The years of resentment, the constant erosion of my self-worth, the endless financial drain, it all coalesced into a single, unshakable thought. No more. The next few days were a blur of focused activity. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I acted. My apartment, usually a haven of calm, became a war room. I pulled out old banker's boxes from the back of my closet. Boxes I hadn't looked at in years. Inside, a meticulously kept, if painful, history of my family's reliance on me. Bank statements going back over a decade, highlighted withdrawals with notes like Mia, tuition instalment, Mom and Dad, emergency loan, again. Printed emails with subject lines like urgent help needed or just a little something for Mia's birthday trip. Receipts for designer handbags I'd bought Mia for Christmases and birthdays because Mum insisted it's what all her friends are getting. Copies of loan agreements I'd co-signed for Mia's first apartment, her second car, after Snowball was totaled in an accident she claimed wasn't her fault. The down payment for their house, a wire transfer confirmation that still made my stomach clench. Each piece of paper was a fresh stab, a reminder of a sacrifice made, a boundary crossed, a need of my own deferred. The emergency roof repair for Mum and Dad that coincided with their anniversary cruise. The investment opportunity Dad roped me into that mysteriously vanished along with my money. Mia's endless stream of, can you just cover this month's rent, car payment, on credit card bill? It was all there, a monument to my own enabling, yes, but also to their relentless, shameless exploitation. The more I unearthed, the colder my anger became, solidifying into something sharp and purposeful. I compiled it all, spreadsheets itemizing dates, amounts and purposes, a digital folder bulging with scanned documents. It was a horrifying testament to how much I had given and how little I had ever received in return, not even basic respect. Then I started researching lawyers, not just any lawyer. I needed someone formidable, someone who wouldn't be swayed by sob stories or family drama, someone who understood contracts and, if necessary, how to break them. I found Sloane McCoy. Her website described her as specialising in complex financial disputes and contracts law. Her photo exuded a no-nonsense competence. I booked a consultation. Walking into her sleek, minimalist office felt like stepping into a different world, a world where logic and legal standing mattered more than emotional blackmail. Sloane was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with an air of calm authority. She listened patiently as I laid it all out. The decades of financial support, the current demand for a $100,000 wedding, Mia's text message demoting me to clean-up duty. I presented my meticulously organised evidence, the spreadsheets, the copies of transfers, the emails. I didn't get emotional. I stated facts. When I finished, Sloane leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Miss Sullivan," she began, her voice even, "this is quite a history." "I know," I said, my voice flat. "I enabled it for too long. But this wedding demand and that text, that was the line." "Understandable," Sloane nodded. She picked up a summary sheet I'd prepared, her eyes scanning the figures. You've been incredibly thorough. This documentation is excellent. She paused, then tapped a section detailing the initial wedding vendor deposits I'd already been pressured into making for Mia, the venue hold, the photographer's retainer. Things Mia had booked months ago, assuring me, "It's just to lock it in, Maddie. You can pay the rest later." Sloane looked up, her gaze direct. "You mentioned your family told you that you would be covering all wedding expenses, and these initial deposits were made under that premise, correct? And now they've presented you with a bill for $100,000, which you are refusing." "Correct," I confirmed. A glint appeared in Sloane's eyes. "Interesting. If these initial deposits were made under duress, or based on a significant misrepresentation of the overall financial expectation, their current demand certainly qualifies, then any contracts you entered into with these vendors could potentially be voided from your end. Or at the very least," she continued, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips, "the liability for the full contract amounts could be legally shifted to the people who are actually having the wedding." A flicker, not of hope, but of grim, satisfying possibility lit up inside me, the first spark of a wildfire. Sloane's words hung in the air, a lifeline and a weapon all in one. "Shifted?" I repeated, the implications starting to dawn. "Precisely," Sloane affirmed, her smile a little wider now. "If you made deposits based on their assurance that you were handling it, and now they've escalated that to an untenable demand, while simultaneously demoting your role, that's a material change. We can argue misrepresentation, undue influence. Essentially, they told the vendors you were the bank, got you to put skin in the game, and then tried to change the terms so drastically it became impossible. We can notify these vendors that your portion of the agreement is void due to these factors, and that all future financial obligations revert to the primary contracting parties, namely your sister and her fiancé, or your parents if they co-signed. The idea was audacious, it was ruthless, it was perfect." The next week was spent in a whirlwind of legal strategy. Sloane and I worked to craft an itemised invoice. Not just for the wedding, oh no. This was the invoice to end all invoices. Every significant sum I had ever loaned or gifted under duress. The down payment on their house, Mia's 4 years of out-of-state tuition, the full cost of Snowball and its successor, the endless string of smaller bailouts that, when added up, amounted to a staggering figure. Reliving each transaction was like picking at an old wound. I remembered the anxiety of transferring that house deposit, knowing it would deplete my savings to almost zero. I recalled the arguments, the guilt trips, the hollow promises of repayment that never materialised. It was emotionally draining, each line item a fresh wave of bitterness. But with each entry, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about stopping the wedding extortion. It was about reclaiming years of my life, my resources, my self-respect. During this period, my family, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing, continued their wedding preparations with gusto. Mum would call, her voice dripping with false cheer. "Maddie, darling, Mia was wondering if you'd mind picking up the wedding favours. They're at that little boutique downtown, you know the one. Terribly expensive, but so worth it." I'd make a non-committal noise and change the subject. Mia sent texts with links to bridesmaid dresses, for her other bridesmaids, of course, asking my opinion on colours. "Do you think blush or champagne for the girls, Maddie? And don't forget, you need to be there early on the day to help set up the reception hall before you get changed into your, well, whatever you're wearing for clean-up." I'd reply with a thumbs-up emoji, the irony not lost on me. Sloane, meanwhile, had her team do some discreet digging. "It appears," she informed me during one of our meetings, her tone dry, "that your parents have already informed several key vendors, the vineyard, the caterer, even the string quartet, that their successful daughter Madeline is delighted to be covering all expenses as a wedding gift. They've been leveraging your name and perceived wealth quite effectively." That just added fuel to the fire. They weren't just expecting me to pay, they were actively using my reputation to secure services they had no intention of paying for themselves. Then came the twist. I was sifting through a box of very old bank statements, looking for the exact date of the emergency roof repair funds I'd given Mum and Dad. I remembered that period vividly. I'd been saving for a professional development course, something that could have really boosted my career. But Dad had sounded so desperate on the phone, talking about leaks and potential structural damage. I'd wired them nearly $10,000, telling myself the course could wait. I ate instant noodles for a month to make up the shortfall in my own budget. And there it was. The transfer. $9,500. A week later, on Mom's social media archives, I'd had to go deep back to her old, rarely used accounts. I found it. A photo album titled Anniversary Getaway. Pictures of Mom, Dad, and Mia beaming on the deck of a cruise ship. Palm trees in the background, cocktails in hand. The date stamp on the photos was exactly 10 days after I'd sent the roof money. I stared at the screen, the cheerful vacation photos, a sickening contrast to my memory of cheap noodles and deferred dreams. There was no mention of a new roof, no pictures of diligent repairmen, just sun-drenched smiles bought with my sacrifice. Any lingering trace of doubt, any tiny misplaced flicker of familial obligation I might have still harboured, vaporised. It was replaced by a cold, clear certainty. They didn't deserve my help. They didn't deserve my consideration. They deserved consequences. A few days later, a thick, cream-coloured envelope arrived in my mailbox. Embossed, elegant, with Mia's and her fiancé's names intertwined in flowing script. The official wedding invitation. It was beautiful. A picture of blissful, ignorant joy. I held it in my hand, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. My RSVP, I thought, was almost ready. And it was going to be a showstopper. The official wedding invitation sat on my kitchen counter for a day, a pristine symbol of their oblivious entitlement. Every time I walked past it, that cold smile would return. My RSVP. It was going to be so much more than a simple yes or no. Sloane and I had finalised the package. It was a masterpiece of polite, professional devastation. First, the RSVP card itself. I'd found a suitably sarcastic one online, a drawing of a champagne flute shattering, with the pre-printed text, joyfully accepts my eyes. Regretfully declines. I ticked regretfully declines, and in my neatest handwriting, added a little asterisk. At the bottom, I wrote, attendance contingent on prior financial reconciliation. See attached. Attached was the invoice. Page after page, meticulously itemised, dating back over a decade. The down payment for their house. Mia's tuition, her cars, her rent bailouts, the endless loans to Mum and Dad for everything from urgent bills to vague investment opportunities. The grand total, printed in bold at the bottom of the final page, was a figure that made even my own breath catch. It was astronomical. It was accurate. The final piece of the trifecta was the letter from Sloane McCoy, printed on her firm's heavy, expensive-looking letterhead. It was a marvel of legal precision and thinly veiled contempt. It formally stated that, effective immediately, all financial support from me to Laurel, Jacob and Mia was terminated. It referenced the enclosed invoice, demanding a proposed repayment plan within 30 days. And then, the kicker. It formally notified them that any and all wedding vendor deposits I had made were being contested and recalled due to significant misrepresentation, undue influence, and a material alteration of the agreed-upon terms, namely, their expectation that I would now fund a $100,000 wedding. The letter clearly stated that all contractual liabilities for the wedding, including any outstanding balances or cancellation fees, now rested squarely with them, Mia and her fiancé, and Laurel and Jacob as co-signatories or guarantors. I assembled 3 identical packages, one for Mum and Dad, one for Mia, and just for good measure, one for Mia's fiancé. I figured he deserved to know what kind of financial black hole he was marrying into. I sent them via certified mail, return receipt requested. The click of the postal clerk's stamp felt like the firing of a starting gun. Then I waited. The first few days were eerily quiet. The return receipts came back, signed. They had received the packages. The silence was unnerving, a coiled spring of anticipation. I half expected my phone to explode with furious calls, my doorbell to ring with outraged family members. Nothing. It was a deafening, unsettling void. I found myself checking my phone constantly, jumping at every notification. I tried to go about my life, work, gym, see friends. But the impending explosion loomed over everything. I felt a strange mix of trepidation. What if they actually tried to fight this, to drag it out, to make my life even more miserable? And an immense, profound relief. I had finally done it. I had stood up for myself, not with angry words in a heated argument, but with cold, hard facts and legal backing. Then, nearly a week after the packages had been delivered, my phone rang. It was Mum. Her caller ID photo, a smiling picture of her and Mia from last Christmas, a Christmas I'd largely funded, seemed to mock me. I let it ring for a moment, took a deep breath and answered, putting it on speaker as Sloane had advised. "Madeline, darling." Her voice was honey-sweet, laced with a carefully constructed confusion. The kind of voice she used when she was about to ask for something particularly outrageous and wanted to preempt any resistance. "Maddie, sweetie, are you there?" "I'm here, Mum," I said, keeping my voice neutral, calm. "Oh, good," she trilled. "Listen, darling, there seems to be some sort of dreadful misunderstanding. We received this very strange package from you, and from some lawyer." She gave a little nervous laugh. "It's all very confusing. That silly invoice, and all that talk about wedding contract, I'm sure it's just a big mix-up." I could almost hear her mentally rehearsing her lines, trying to gauge my reaction. "There's no misunderstanding, Mom," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "The letter from my lawyer, Ms. McCoy, is quite clear, as is the invoice." A pause. The honey was starting to curdle. "Now, Madeline, don't be difficult. This isn't funny. Mia is very upset. You know how sensitive she is, especially with the wedding so close." "My lawyer's contact information is on the letterhead," I stated, just as Sloane had coached me. "Any further discussion regarding this matter should be directed to her." "Your lawyer?" Mum's voice sharpened, the sweetness vanishing completely. "What on earth do you need a lawyer for, Madeline? We're family. This is a family matter. You can't just send lawyers after your own mother and father." "The documents speak for themselves," I repeated. "Please direct all future communications to Sloane McCoy." But the wedding deposits!" Her voice was rising now, a distinct note of panic creeping in. "You can't just take them back. The venue, the caterer, they're all booked. What are we supposed to do?" "That is no longer my concern," I said, and the words, though harsh, felt incredibly liberating. "Goodbye, Mum." I hung up before she could reply, my hand surprisingly steady. The first shot had been fired. The silence was broken. And I had a feeling the real fireworks were just about to begin. Mum's call was just the opening salvo. As Sloane had predicted, once the vendors started receiving official notifications from her office. Polite but firm letters stating that my financial backing was withdrawn due to misrepresentation, and that all outstanding and future contractual obligations now fell to Mia, her fiancé, and Laurel and Jacob. The real chaos erupted. My phone started ringing off the hook, but not from my family. It was Sloane giving me updates. "The Vineyard called," she said one morning, a hint of amusement in her professional tone. "Apparently, they require the rather substantial remaining balance for the venue hire within 7 days, or they'll release the date." They seemed quite surprised to learn that Madeline, the generous benefactor, was no longer footing the bill. Then it was the caterer, a Michelin-nodded chef whose services Mia had insisted were non-negotiable. "They're demanding full payment for the agreed-upon menu for 200 guests immediately," Sloane reported. "And they're threatening legal action if it's not forthcoming. It seems your sister signed a rather ironclad contract." The wedding planner, a woman with a reputation for orchestrating fairytale events, was next. She, it turned out, had also been told I was the financial guarantor. Her calls to my parents and Mia were apparently met with increasing panic and deflection. The voicemails started piling up on my phone, despite my clear instructions to direct all communication to Sloane. Laurel's messages were a roller coaster of emotion. First, screeching fury. "Madeline! How dare you do this to us? You are a cruel, ungrateful child. You're trying to destroy your sister's happiness." Then tearful pleas. "Maddie, please, darling, you can't mean this. Think of Mia. This will break her heart. We can talk about this, please. Just call me back." Jacob tried a different tactic. He left a blustering, angry message for Sloane, which she forwarded to me. An audio file attached to an email with the subject line, "For your amusement." Dad's voice, usually so mild, was full of impotent rage. "Ms. McCoy, I don't know what kind of lies my daughter has been telling you, but this is a family matter. You have no right to interfere. We demand you cease and desist immediately." Sloane's only comment in the email was, "He clearly doesn't understand what cease and desist actually means." Mia's contributions were mostly hysterical. Tear-soaked voicemails left on my phone. "You've ruined everything, Madeline. Everything. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and you've deliberately sabotaged it. I hate you. I hate you." I listened to them all, a strange detachment settling over me. The anger was still there, a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but it was overlaid with a chilling sense of vindication. This was the consequence. This was what happened when you push someone too far. News of the impending wedding disaster began to seep out into their social circle. Mum was a prominent figure in her local charity league, Dad had his golf buddies, and Mia had her gaggle of equally entitled friends. Whispers started. "Did you hear about Mia's wedding? Apparently there are issues." The carefully constructed facade of the perfect, affluent family was beginning to crack. Then came the fraud alert. I was at work, in the middle of a presentation, when my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I excused myself and checked it. A text from my bank. "Fraud alert. Did you attempt a transaction of £5,275 at Bridal Bliss Boutique? Reply yes or no." My blood ran cold for a second, then instantly hot. Bridal Bliss Boutique. That was where Mia was getting her ridiculously expensive custom gown. And the card. It had to be the old supplementary credit card. Years ago, I'd given Mia one for emergencies only when she first went to college. I'd long since forgotten about it, assuming it was lost or expired. But Sloane's team, in their initial sweep of my financials, had flagged it as a potential liability and advised me to lock it down. I'd called the bank and had it frozen, but apparently not cancelled entirely. Mia, in a move of breathtaking stupidity and desperation, had tried to use it. I immediately replied no to the bank text. The transaction was declined. A grim, almost vicious satisfaction spread through me. She was that desperate, that foolish. I forwarded the bank alert to Sloane. Her reply was swift. "Noted. We'll send a supplementary letter regarding attempted unauthorised access to frozen funds. Some people never learn." The final nail in the coffin came a few days later. Sloane called me. "The wedding planner just contacted your parents and Mia," she said, her voice calm. "She's given them an ultimatum. Full payment of all outstanding vendor balances. The current tally is just over $130,000 within 48 hours. If not, she will publicly cancel all services, inform all invited guests of the cancellation due to non-payment, and initiate legal proceedings for breach of contract and recovery of her own substantial fees and any penalties incurred from other vendors she contracted on their behalf." 48 hours. The clock was ticking. I pictured the panic, the recriminations, the sheer, unadulterated terror unfolding in that house. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt a flicker of something that might have been a smile. Not a happy one, but a deeply satisfied one. The 48-hour deadline passed in a blaze of silent anticipation on my end, and what I could only imagine was frantic, headless chicken panic on theirs. Unsurprisingly, they couldn't conjure over $100,000 out of thin air. The wedding planner, true to her word, brought the hammer down. Sloane kept me updated. "The Vineyard has officially cancelled their booking and is retaining the initial deposit as per their contract. The caterer is sending a demand letter for their full fee plus damages. The florist, the band, the photographer, they're all following suit. The wedding planner has formally terminated her services and is preparing to sue for her losses and breach of contract." It was a cascade of financial ruin, entirely of their own making. They tried, apparently, to salvage something. Frantic calls were made to cheaper venues, to friends who could cook, to anyone who might offer services for free or on a flimsy promise of future payment. But word travels fast in those circles. The story of the spectacularly imploded high society wedding, the one bankrolled by the generous older sister, who had suddenly pulled the plug, was becoming the juiciest gossip of the season. No one wanted to touch them. Vendors were demanding cash up front, and cash was the one thing they no longer had access to, at least not from me. The grand implosion was swift and brutal. The dream wedding didn't just shrink, it vaporized, humiliatingly, publicly. Then on a rainy Tuesday evening, my apartment buzzer shrieked. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the intercom camera. My heart leaped, then settled into a cold, hard beat. Laurel, Jacob, Mia. Their faces were grim, rain-streaked and furious. I buzzed them up. Part of me knew this confrontation was inevitable. Part of me, perversely, welcomed it. Let them say their piece. I was ready. They practically stormed in when I opened the door, Mia pushing past me first, her face blotchy and swollen from crying. Laurel's expression was venomous, Jacob's a mixture of anger and pathetic bewilderment. "How could you?" Laurel hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "How could you do this to your own family, to your sister? You've ruined my life!" Mia shrieked, her voice cracking. This was supposed to be my one perfect day. My one day. And you destroyed it. Deliberately! Jacob just stood there, shaking his head. "Madeline, Madeline. After everything we've done for you." I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Done for me?" I asked, my tone dangerously quiet. "Or everything I've done for you?" "Don't you dare try to twist this," Laurel spat. "You're a vindictive, selfish brat. You always have been. Jealous of Mia, jealous of her happiness." "Jealous?" I let out a short, humourless laugh. "Oh, Mum, if you only knew. Let's talk about jealousy. Or better yet, let's talk about that emergency roof repair money. The $10,000 I gave you when I was eating instant noodles for a month. Remember that? Or were you too busy enjoying your anniversary cruise to notice?" The colour drained from Laurel's face. Jacob looked stunned. Mia just looked confused, then angrier. What cruise?" Jacob stammered. "The one you all went on, right after I sent you money for a roof that, miraculously, never seemed to get fixed," I said, my eyes locking onto Laurel's. "The one you posted pictures of all over social media. Don't worry, I have copies." Laurel opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she seemed speechless. "This isn't about a cruise!" Mia screamed, stamping her foot like a petulant child. "This is about my wedding! My life! You took that away from me!" "No, Mia," I said, my voice still calm, but with an edge of steel. "I didn't take anything away from you. You, Mom, Dad, you did this to yourselves. For years, you've treated me like an endless supply of cash, a personal assistant, a doormat. You demanded $100,000 for a wedding, then told me I was on clean-up duty. You lied to vendors, using my name to secure services you had no intention of paying for. You even tried to fraudulently use my credit card. Their faces were a picture, shock, disbelief, and dawning, horrified understanding that I knew it all. This, I said, gesturing vaguely to encompass their ruined plans, their public humiliation, is a consequence. Is the bill finally coming, due for decades of greed and exploitation? You built a fantasy on my back, and when I finally refused to carry you anymore, it all came crashing down. That's not my fault. That's yours." Laurel found her voice again, raw and shaking. "You will regret this, Madeline. You'll end up alone, with no one, just your precious money." "I'd rather be alone with my money and my self-respect," I replied evenly, "than broken, disrespected in your company." The argument escalated. Mia started sobbing hysterically, collapsing onto my sofa. Laurel was screaming now, incoherent accusations and insults. Jacob was trying to placate her, looking utterly defeated. It was ugly, raw, and pathetic. Finally, when Laurel started throwing around names of distant relatives she was going to call to tell them what a monster I was, I'd had enough. I picked up my phone. "Building security, please. My apartment. There are some disruptive individuals who are refusing to leave." Their faces when they heard me on the phone were priceless. The fight drained out of them, replaced by a stunned, impotent fury. Security arrived quickly. 2 large, impassive men. They didn't need much convincing. My family's tirade had been audible down the hall. As they were being escorted out, Mia, tear-streaked and trembling, turned back at the doorway. Her eyes were filled with a desperate, childish hatred. "I hope you're happy alone with your money," she shrieked, her voice echoing in the hallway. "You'll die miserable and unloved." I just looked at her, a strange mixture of pity and absolute finality washing over me. Then I slowly closed my door, the click of the lock sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. Victory. It wasn't sweet, not entirely, but it was profound. And it was mine. The silence in my apartment after security escorted them out was heavy, but not oppressive. It was the silence of a battlefield after the decisive final engagement. Mia's parting shriek, "You'll die miserable and unloved," still echoed faintly in my ears, but it lacked its intended sting. Unloved by them, perhaps. Miserable, not anymore. The adrenaline from the confrontation slowly ebbed, replaced by a profound sense of exhaustion, and beneath that, a bedrock of unshakable peace. It was done. Truly done. The door wasn't just closed. It was bolted, sealed, the path back to the way things were, utterly obliterated. In the days and weeks that followed, the full extent of the fallout for my family became clearer, not through direct contact, there was none, but through the grapevine, primarily via my cousin Layla. Layla, who had always been a quiet observer of our family's dysfunctional dynamics, called me a few days after the incident, as she termed it. "Heard there was some excitement at your place," she said, her voice carefully neutral but with an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite decipher. Support. Curiosity. "You could say that," I replied, equally guarded. "Well," Layla continued, "Aunt Laurel has been calling everyone, telling them you've lost your mind, that you're cruel, vindictive, the works. Uncle Jacob just sounds broken. And Mia. Mia's apparently taken to her bed and declared her life over." I listened, a strange detachment settling over me. There was no triumph, no gloating, just a quiet affirmation that their actions had consequences, and those consequences were now playing out. Sloane, ever the professional, kept me apprised of the legal wranglings. The vendors, one by one, were filing claims or initiating lawsuits. The sums were significant. The dream wedding had turned into a financial nightmare for them. "They're exploring options," Sloane told me during one call, "but their options are limited. It seems their credit is shot, and they have very few liquid assets apart from the house. The house. The one I'd helped them buy." The irony wasn't lost on me. Layla called again a week or so later. "They're putting the house on the market," she said, her voice softer this time. "Aunt Laurel is devastated. Apparently, they have to. The debts are piling up. Mia's fiancé, well, let's just say he's having second thoughts about the whole Sullivan experience. No surprise there. I started to use the reclaimed space in my life, mental, emotional, and financial. The constant low-level anxiety that had been my companion for years began to dissipate. I slept better. I found myself smiling more for no particular reason. The money I was no longer hemorrhaging into the family coffers started to accumulate. I looked at my savings account, and for the first time, it felt truly mine. I took that professional development course I'd put off years ago because of the roof repair. I booked a solo trip to a place I'd always wanted to see, a small coastal town known for its hiking trails and quiet beaches. No 5-star resorts, no pressure to impress anyone. Just me, my thoughts, and the open road. One evening, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle, a glass of wine in my hand. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Madeline?" The voice was hesitant, almost unrecognisable. It was Jacob. "Dad? Maddie, I just wanted to say," he faltered. "Your mother, she's not doing well. This whole thing, it's been very hard on her. On all of us." I waited, saying nothing. There was no apology in his voice, just a statement of their suffering, as if expecting me to somehow alleviate it. "Mia, her young man left her," he continued, his voice thick with unshed tears. "The wedding, the debts, it was too much for him. She blames you, you know." I know, I said quietly. We might lose the house, Maddie. His voice cracked. The house you helped us get. There it was, the subtle, desperate plea, the hope that even now I might swoop in and save them. I took a slow sip of my wine. The city air felt cool and clean. Dad, I said, my voice gentle but firm. What happened was the result of choices. Choices you all made over many, many years. I made my choice too. I chose to stop enabling it. A long silence stretched between us. I could hear his ragged breathing. I wish things could have been different, I added, and I meant it. I wished for the family I'd always wanted, the supportive, loving unit that existed only in my imagination. But I didn't regret protecting myself from the family I actually had. So, that's it then, he finally whispered. You're just washing your hands of us? I'm taking care of myself, Dad, I replied. It's long overdue. I ended the call, not with anger, but with a quiet sadness for what could never be. But the sadness was tinged with an overwhelming sense of freedom. Mia thought I'd be miserable and unloved. She was wrong. I was finally learning to love myself. And that, I realised, was more than enough. The scales had balanced. Not through magic or divine intervention, but through deliberate action. My action. And the peace that came with it was real. It was earned. And it was all mine.